Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed deeper into the cave. The air was getting hotter with every step, and his oxygen gauge was dropping faster than he liked. He had been following the distress signal for almost 2 hours now, and he still had no idea what was sending it. The caves beneath New Haven's colony were dangerous. Everyone knew that. The ground shook sometimes and rocks fell without warning, but Jake was a lieutenant in the Colonial Security Force, and when a distress beacon went off, he had to check it out. That was the job. His helmet light caught something moving up ahead. Jake stopped and pulled out his scanner. The readings made no sense. High temperature, unusual energy signature, and a life form reading that did not match anything in the database. Whatever was down here, it was not supposed to exist. Jake moved forward carefully. His boots crunched on the crystal floor, and the sound echoed through the tunnel. The walls were glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was beautiful and creepy at the same time. Then he saw it. Between two fallen pillars of rock, something was trapped. At first, Jake thought it might be some kind of large lizard, but as he got closer, his breath caught in his throat. The creature had scales that shimmered like hot metal, wings folded against its sides, and a long neck that ended in a wedge-shaped head. Its eyes were golden and way too intelligent for any animal. It was a dragon, a real dragon. Jake had seen pictures in the old databases. The draconids were supposed to be extinct. They had disappeared thousands of years ago, long before humans ever left Earth. The other alien races talked about them sometimes, but always like they were telling ghost stories. Nobody actually believed dragons were real. But here one was, right in front of him, and it was dying. The dragon was small, probably just a baby. One of its wings was bent wrong, and its breathing was fast and shallow. Its eyes fixed on Jake, and he saw something in them that made his chest hurt. The creature was scared and in pain, and it knew Jake was its only chance. Jake's radio crackled. It was Captain Hayes back at base. "Morrison, what's your status? You've been down there too long." Jake looked at the dragon, then at his oxygen gauge. He had maybe 3 hours of air left if he was lucky. Getting back to the surface would take 1 hour. That left 2 hours to try and free this creature. "Yeah, well, I found something, sir," Jake said into his radio. "I need more time." "Negative, Morrison. Get back here now. Whatever it is can wait." Jake stared at the dragon. Its chest was rising and falling so fast, it would not last another hour, let alone long enough for him to go get help and come back. "Sorry, sir," Jake said. "I can't do that." He turned off his radio before the captain could argue. The dragon watched as Jake approached. It did not try to bite him or burn him or whatever dragons were supposed to do. It just watched with those golden eyes that seemed far too old and wise for something so young. "Okay," Jake said, even though he knew the creature probably could not understand him. "Let's get you out of here." The rocks pinning the dragon were heavy. Jake had to use his emergency jack to lift the first one, and even then it took all his strength to shift it enough. The dragon made a small sound, almost like a kitten mewing, and Jake's heart twisted. "I know, buddy. I know it hurts. Just hang on." He worked for the next 3 hours. His oxygen alarm started beeping when he still had 2 more rocks to move. Jake ignored it. He ignored the messages from Captain Hayes that were probably piling up on his turned-off radio. He ignored the fact that he might die down here. All that mattered was freeing this creature. When the last rock finally moved, the dragon crawled forward on shaky legs. It was bigger than Jake had thought, almost as heavy as he was. Its copper-colored scales were scratched and dull from being trapped, but it was alive. The dragon pressed its snout against Jake's helmet. The touch was gentle, careful. Jake felt something warm spread through his chest, a feeling he could not quite name. It was like the dragon was saying thank you in a way that did not need words. "Can you walk?" Jake asked. The dragon tried to stand, but its hurt wing made it stumble. Jake caught it before it could fall. "Right. Looks like I'm carrying you." Using his emergency rope and some spare fabric from his pack, Jake made a kind of sling. Getting the dragon into it was hard. Getting the dragon in the sling onto his back was harder. By the time Jake started climbing back toward the surface, his muscles were already screaming. The journey up was a nightmare. The dragon was heavy and kept shifting its weight. Jake's oxygen alarm was beeping constantly now. He had maybe 30 minutes of air left, and it would take at least 45 minutes to reach the surface if everything went perfectly. Everything did not go perfectly. Halfway up, the ground shook. A tremor, small but enough to make rocks fall. Jake pressed himself against the wall and protected the dragon with his body as debris rained down around them. A chunk of crystal hit his shoulder, and pain shot down his arm. But the dragon made that small mewing sound again, and Jake gritted his teeth and kept climbing. His vision started to get fuzzy when he saw light ahead. Real light, not the glow from the cave walls. The twin suns of New Havens were setting, painting the sky red and gold. Jake stumbled out of the cave entrance and fell to his knees. The dragon tumbled from the sling but landed on its feet. It looked at Jake with those golden eyes. Now try, and then it did something strange. It started to hum. The sound was not loud, but Jake felt it in his bones. It made the air vibrate and his teeth buzz. The dragon's scales began to glow brighter, shifting from dull copper to brilliant gold. Jake's radio came back to life with a burst of static. "Morrison! What the hell is that thing?" Jake looked up and saw Captain Hayes's voice was sharp with alarm because the dragon was looking at the sky. Jake followed its gaze and felt his blood turn to ice. Something was coming down from space. Something huge. It looked like a falling star at first, but as it got closer, Jake could see it had wings. Wings that could block out the sun. Wings attached to a body the size of a spaceship. The baby dragon's parent had found them, and it was coming fast. The dragon that landed on the plains outside the colony was bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. It was black with purple highlights that rippled across its scales like oil on water. When it spread its wings, the stars disappeared behind them. Its eyes glowed with a light that made Jake feel very small and very young. Every alarm in the colony started going off at once. The defense turrets swung around to point at the massive dragon. Soldiers ran to their positions. The colonists who lived in New Havens rushed into the underground shelters, parents carrying children and people grabbing whatever they could carry. Jake stood frozen. The baby dragon, the one he had named Ash in his head, chirped and tried to run toward the huge dragon, but its hurt wing made it stumble, and so it just sat next to Jake and made more of those strange humming sounds. The big dragon lowered its head and made a sound back. It was not quite a roar and not quite a song. The sound carried something more than just noise. Jake felt it in his chest, felt it in his head, felt it trying to tell him something he could not quite understand. "Morrison, get away from that thing right now," Captain Hayes yelled through the radio. "Get inside the walls before it kills you." But Jake could not move. He was watching the big dragon's eyes. They were looking at Ash, then at Jake, then back at Ash. The dragon was not acting like a mindless monster. It was thinking. It was figuring something out. Jake made a decision that he knew was crazy. He stepped forward, away from the colony walls, and walked toward the massive dragon. "Morrison." "No," Hayes screamed. Jake kept walking. His legs shook with every step, and his heart was beating so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. But something told him this was important. Something told him that running would be the worst thing he could do. When he was close enough to see his own tiny reflection in the dragon's enormous eye, the creature lowered its head until it was level with Jake. This close, Jake could feel the heat coming off its scales. He could smell something like hot metal and lightning. Then the dragon did something Jake did not expect. It touched his mind. It was not like hearing words. It was like suddenly understanding things without anyone saying them. Jake felt gratitude wash over him. The dragon knew he had saved its baby. He felt a question form in his mind. "Why did you help?" Jake did not know how to answer with words that were not words. So he just thought about what he felt when he saw Ash trapped in the cave. He thought about how he could not just leave something to die when he could help. He thought about how doing the right thing mattered more than following safe rules. The big dragon's eyes grew wider. Jake felt surprise coming from it, and maybe approval. Then new pictures filled his head, moving so fast it made him dizzy. He saw dragons flying through space, thousands of them, building cities on planets and helping younger races grow and learn. He saw a great empire that stretched across the whole galaxy. Then he saw war. Something dark and terrible came, eating stars and planets. The dragons fought it, and many died. The ones who survived hid, scattered across space, waiting and sleeping. And now the terrible thing was coming back. Jake gasped and fell to his knees. The dragon pulled back from his mind, and the connection broke. Jake's head spun like he had just gotten off a really bad carnival ride. "Jake!" someone shouted. He looked up and saw Captain Hayes running toward him with a squad of soldiers. They all had their weapons ready but looked terrified. The big dragon made a low rumbling sound. It was not threatening, more like a warning to be careful. "It's okay," Jake said, his voice shaky. He got to his feet. "She's not here to hurt us. Her name is Ember. She's Ash's mother." "How do you know that?" Hayes demanded. "She told me, in my head. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true." Hayes stared at Jake like he had grown a second head. But before he could say anything, more ships appeared in the sky. And these were not dragons. They were spacecraft from the Galactic Council, the group of alien races that humans had joined when they first left Earth and met other species. Over the next few days, New Havens turned into the busiest place in the sector. Ships kept arriving. The Krell came, looking like giant mantises in their environment suits. The Queller arrived in water-filled ships, their tentacles pressing against the glass. The Vex came too, beings made of living crystal that hummed when they moved. They all wanted to know about the dragons. Most of them seemed scared. Jake spent most of his time with Ash and Ember. The baby dragon was healing fast, much faster than any normal animal would. His wing was already straightening out, and he was starting to eat again. He followed Jake everywhere, making happy chirping sounds. And more dragons started arriving too. They came from hidden places across the galaxy, answering some kind of call that Jake did not understand. Each one was different. Some were blue like deep water, some were red like fire, some had scales that looked like they were made of stars. One dragon was older than all the others. It was so big it could not land near the colony without crushing buildings, so it stayed in the hills. The other dragons called it Tide, and even Ember seemed respectful around it. The aliens from the Galactic Council held a big meeting. Jake had to attend because he was the one who first made contact with the dragons. He sat in a room with ambassadors from a dozen different species, all of them arguing about what to do. "The draconids are myths," said the Krell ambassador, its voice clicking and buzzing through a translator. "Stories we tell children to scare them. They cannot be real." But a Vex delegate, a being made of purple crystal named Harmony, made a sound like wind chimes. "Not myths, memories we tried to forget. 2,000 years ago, the draconids saved us all. Something terrible came from beyond our galaxy, eating everything it touched. The dragons fought it and won, but barely. They told us they would hide until they were needed again." "And now?" asked Patricia Cole, the colony administrator. She was a tough woman with gray hair who ran New Havens, like a ship captain ran a tight vessel. "Now the enemy returns," Harmony said. "We detected strange things happening at the edge of the galaxy 6 months ago. Whole star systems going dark. We thought it was natural. Yet we were wrong." Jake felt Ember's presence touch his mind, confirming what Harmony said. The dragons showed him images of the enemy. They were called Devourers. They were not alive like normal things, but they were not machines either. They were something in between, and they fed on the energy of stars and the matter of planets. They left nothing behind but empty space. "So what do we do?" Hayes asked. Jake felt Ember's answer forming in his mind, and he spoke the words for her. "We wake up the other dragons. We gather everyone together. We get ready for war." The problem was that the dragons were scattered and hidden all over the galaxy. Many were sleeping in special places where time moved differently. Finding them all would take years, and the Devourers would be here much sooner than that. That's when Nicole Grant spoke up. Why, she was the colony's chief engineer, a smart woman with red hair and grease under her fingernails. "What if we don't find them one by one? What if we call them all at once?" She explained her idea. The dragons talked to each other using something that went faster than light, something that did not care about distance. If they could make that signal stronger using the colony's communication equipment, they might reach every dragon in the galaxy at the same time. "It's dangerous, Sam," said Dr. Henry Walsh, who had been studying Ash to help him heal. "We'd be mixing technology we barely understand with biological systems. It could fail. It could explode. It could do anything." But it might work, Nicole insisted. And if it does, we get an army of dragons in weeks instead of years. Jake looked at Ash, who was curled up at his feet. The young dragon looked back at him with those golden eyes, and Jake felt certainty flow through their connection. They had to try. Let's do it, Jake said. They worked day and night for 10 days straight. Nicole and her team of engineers built something that looked like it came from a dream, or maybe a nightmare. The colony's communication tower was wrapped in living vines that Ember provided from her own body. The vines glowed gold and pulsed like they had a heartbeat. They connected to a framework made from Ash's shed scales, which had grown into crystal formations that hummed when anyone got close. Jake barely slept during those 10 days. He spent his time going between Ember and the engineers, trying to explain what the dragon was telling him in ways that humans could understand. It was hard because dragons did not think about things the same way people did. They understood the universe through feelings and connections instead of numbers and equations. Ash helped too. The young dragon was growing faster than anyone expected. He was already twice the size he had been when Jake pulled him from the cave. Dr. Walsh said it was because of the bond between Jake and Ash, though he could not explain exactly what that bond was or how it worked. On the morning of the 10th day, everything was ready. Half the colony came out to watch. The device looked beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The living vines wrapped around the metal tower created patterns that hurt to look at too long. The crystals at the base sparkled with light that seemed to come from inside them. Ember positioned herself at the center of the array. Now Jake stood next to her with his hand on her scaled side. Ash sat on Jake's shoulder. The young dragon was light despite his size, like his bones were hollow like a bird's. Nicole stood at the control station with her team. She looked at Jake and gave him a thumbs up. Ready when you are. Jake took a deep breath. He could feel Ember's nervousness through their connection. This had never been done before. They were trying something that mixed magic and science in ways that should not work. But they had no choice. The Devourers were coming, and they needed every dragon they could get. Do it, Jake said. Nicole pressed the activation button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light exploded from the array. It was not normal light. It was light that existed in colors Jake did not have names for. Light that he felt more than saw. So the light passed through him, and suddenly his mind expanded in a way that made him want to scream and laugh at the same time. Jake was not just Jake anymore. He was connected to something vast, something that stretched across the galaxy like a web made of thoughts and feelings. He could sense the other dragons, hundreds of them, sleeping in hidden places. He felt them wake up as the signal reached them. He felt their confusion, then their understanding, then their anger at being disturbed. The connection lasted maybe 5 seconds but felt like 5 hours. When it broke, Jake collapsed. His legs gave out, and he hit the ground hard. His head spun and his stomach wanted to empty itself. Did it work? Someone asked. The voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. Ember's response rumbled through everyone's mind, not just Jake's. It was the first time she had spoken to more than one person at once. They are coming. They heard the call, but they are not happy about being woken. Jake lay on the ground and tried to remember how to breathe. Ash nuzzled against his face, making worried chirping sounds. Slowly, Jake's head stopped spinning enough that he could sit up. How long until they get here? Captain Hayes asked. Ember showed them an image. Days, not weeks. The first dragons would arrive soon. The first dragon came 3 days later, and it made Ember look small by comparison. It was dark blue, the color of the ocean depths, and when it landed, the ground shook like an earthquake. Its eyes were old, older than anything Jake had ever seen. They looked at the colony with something between curiosity and contempt. Jake felt the dragon's name in his mind. Tide. Sovereign, this was the ancient one the other dragons respected, the one who had been alive when humans were still living in caves on Earth. The mental connection Tide made was not gentle like Ember's. It was like being grabbed and shaken. Jake felt the dragon's anger at being woken after only 2,000 years of sleep. Tide wanted to know why his rest had been disturbed for creatures who barely lived 100 years. Because something is coming, Jake said out loud, even though he knew Tide could hear his thoughts. The Devourers, they're coming back. Tide's anger shifted to something else. Weariness, maybe, or sadness. The ancient dragon showed Jake memories of the last war against the Devourers. Jake saw dragons dying by the hundreds, saw planets turn to dust, saw the survivors fleeing and hiding because they could not win. And we failed before. Tide's thoughts were heavy with grief. We lost half our kind stopping the Devourers, and the younger races learned nothing. They spread across the galaxy, taking and using and making the same mistakes. Why should we die for them again? But Ember pushed back against Tide's despair. Jake felt her thoughts, fierce and determined. Because one of these young creatures risked everything to save my child. He did not ask for reward. He did not even know what Ash was. He just saw suffering and chose to help. That means something. That means maybe this time will be different. Different how? Tide demanded. Maybe this time we do not fight alone, Ember said. Over the next 2 weeks, more dragons arrived. They came alone or in small groups, answering the call Jake and the others had sent out. Each was unique. Some had scales like gemstones. Some had wings that looked like they were made of fire or water or starlight. Some were friendly and curious about the humans and other aliens. Some were angry and wanted to leave immediately. Jake tried to talk to as many as he could. Ash helped, acting as a bridge between Jake and the older dragons who did not trust humans. The young dragon was special somehow. The other dragons treated him with a respect that seemed odd for one so young. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was panicking. Ships from every member species started pulling back from the outer systems. Some races began evacuating their colonies. The Krell mobilized their entire fleet, preparing for what they assumed would be an invasion by the dragons themselves. It was Nicole who discovered the terrible truth. See, she had been studying the data from the signal they sent, checking the readings to make sure the equipment had not been damaged. That's when she found the anomaly. The quantum resonance they had created did not just travel through space. It had created an echo that bounced backward and forward through time. She called an emergency meeting with Jake, Captain Hayes, Patricia Cole, and representatives from the Dragons. "We made a mistake," Nicole said, her face pale. "The signal we sent out was like lighting a beacon fire. Yes, it called the Dragons, but the Devourers can sense it too. We did not just wake up the Dragons, we told the enemy exactly where to find them." The room went silent. Jake felt Ember's shock and shame through their bond. Every dragon present shared that feeling. They had walked right into a trap. "How long do we have?" Hayes asked quietly. Nicole pulled up her calculations. "The Devourers are already changing course. They were heading toward the galactic core, but now they are coming here. Best estimate is 6 weeks, maybe 8 if we are very lucky." "Then we fortify," Patricia said, her voice hard. "We turn this system into a fortress. We have dragons. We have ships from every council species. We can hold them." But Tide sent a wave of negation, so strong it made the windows rattle. Jake translated the ancient dragon's thoughts. "You do not understand. Last time, the Devourers numbered in the hundreds. We barely survived. The force coming now will be millions strong. We cannot hold them. We can only delay them." "Delay them for what?" Jake asked. Tide's eyes fixed on Jake, and for the first time, the ancient dragon looked at him with something other than contempt. "For you to finish what you started, young human. You saved one dragon child expecting nothing in return. That created a bond between you. Such bonds are rare. They are also powerful." Jake felt Ash shift on his shoulder. The young dragon seemed excited about something. "I do not understand," Jake said. Ember's gentle voice filled his mind. "Long ago, we were not just dragons. We fought alongside riders from many races. The bond made us stronger, gave us purpose. But we lost that connection. We became weapons without wielders. That is why we failed last time. That is why we hid." "You want to bond with us?" Jake asked. "With humans and the other races?" "With any who are brave enough or foolish enough," Tide said. "The bond makes both partners stronger. Together, we might survive. Apart, we all die." The word spread fast through the colony and to all the council ships in orbit. Dragons were offering to bond with volunteers from any species willing to try. Most people thought it was insane. Some thought it was their only chance at survival. Jake watched as the first volunteers stepped forward. Captain Hayes was among them, which surprised everyone. He walked up to a dragon whose scales shifted colors like the northern lights, blues and greens and purples flowing across its body. Someone has to show these young people how it is done, Hayes said with a slight smile. The dragon lowered its head and touched Hayes on the forehead. For a moment, nothing happened. Then both of them went rigid, their eyes glowing with the same bright light. Jake felt the power of the connection even from 20 feet away. It was like watching two separate things become one thing without losing what made them individual. When it was over, Hayes stood differently. He looked taller somehow, more confident. His eyes had a glow to them that had not been there before. "Her name is Cascade," Hayes said, his voice full of wonder. "I can feel her thoughts, her memories, thousands of years of life all flowing into me, and she can feel mine. We are separate but also together. It is the most incredible thing I have ever experienced." Jake already knew that feeling. He had been bonded with Ash since the moment he saved the hatchling, though neither of them had understood it at the time. Now, watching others go through the same experience, Jake began to understand how special it was. Nicole volunteered next. She bonded with a dragon whose scales looked like ice crystals, clear and sharp and beautiful. The dragon's name translated to something like winter-born fire, which seemed to fit Nicole's personality perfectly. Dr. Walsh bonded with a gentle green dragon who specialized in healing. Ambassador Krell bonded with a massive bronze dragon, proving that the connection worked between species. Even some of the Queller, the water-based aliens, bonded with dragons who could swim through oceans as easily as fly through air. Not everyone who tried could make the bond work. Some people touched a dragon and nothing happened. Dr. Walsh said it was about compatibility, about finding the right match between mind and mind. But when it worked, the results were amazing. Over 300 bonds formed in the first week. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, even some civilians who had no military training at all. Each bonded pair became something greater than the sum of their parts. Jake spent his time training with Ash. The young dragon was growing at an incredible rate now, fed by their bond. He was already the size of a small house, and Dr. Walsh said he would keep growing. Ash could breathe fire now, golden flames that burned hotter than anything the colony's instruments could measure. But more importantly, Jake was learning to fight while bonded with Ash. When they flew together, Jake could see through Ash's eyes while still maintaining his own vision. He could guide Ash's movements with just a thought. They moved as one, anticipating each other's actions before they happened. The other bonded pairs trained too, and the open plains around New Havens became a practice ground. Dragons and riders learned to work together, to trust each other completely. Then the monitoring stations at the edge of the system went dark. The Devourers had arrived early. Jake was in the air with Ash when the alert came through. He felt a chill run down his spine as he looked toward the edge of the system where the stars should be. Instead, there was darkness. Not the normal darkness of space, but something deeper. Something that seemed to eat light itself. "All riders, return to base immediately," Hayes broadcast over the communication link that connected all the bonded pairs. It was another benefit of the bond. They could talk to each other mind to mind over vast distances. Jake guided Ash back to the landing field. Other dragons were coming in from all directions, their riders tense and ready. The unbonded dragons, including Ember and Tide, were gathering in the hills. Patricia Cole called an emergency meeting in the command center. Maps and sensor displays covered every wall, showing the approaching threat. "They hit our outer monitoring stations 2 hours ago," Patricia explained. "We did not get much data before the stations went offline, but what we got is not good." She brought up an image on the main screen. It showed a wall of darkness stretching across space, so vast it covered light years. Within the darkness, shapes moved. The Devourers. "How many?" someone asked. "Millions," Nicole said quietly. "Maybe tens of millions. The sensors could not get an accurate count before they were destroyed." Jake felt sick. They had 300 dragon riders and maybe 50 unbonded dragons. The Galactic Council fleet had gathered here too, bringing thousands of ships from a dozen species. But looking at that wall of darkness, their forces seemed tiny and insignificant. "What are our options?" Hayes asked. "We have civilians evacuating on transport ships," Patricia said. "But it will take at least 6 hours to get everyone off planet and through the jump point to safety. We need to buy them that time." 6 hours against millions of Devourers, a Krell rider said. That is impossible. But Tide's mental voice rumbled through all their minds. Not impossible, difficult, but possible. This is what the bond was meant for. Not just to make us stronger individually, but to make us work as one. Different species, different minds, united in a single purpose. And if we fail, Nicole asked, when then the civilians die anyway when the Devourers consume this system and move to the next, Tide said simply. At least this way we fight. At least we give them a chance. Jake looked at the other riders gathered in the room. He saw fear on their faces, but also determination. They had all chosen this. They had all bonded with dragons, knowing what might come. When do we launch? Jake asked. The Devourers will reach weapons range in 4 hours, Patricia said. The Council fleet will engage first. Try to thin their numbers. The Dragon Riders will be our strike force, hitting them where they are weakest. 4 hours. Jake spent that time with Ash, making sure the dragon was fed and rested. He checked his flight suit and his weapons, though he doubted human guns would do much against the Devourers. The real weapon was Ash and the bond they shared. Ember found him as he was preparing to launch. The massive dragon lowered her head and touched Jake's forehead gently. Thank you, her thoughts were warm in his mind, for saving my son, for giving us hope again. Whatever happens today, know that you have already changed the galaxy. I just did what anyone would do, Jake said. No, Ember corrected. You did what few would do. You risked everything for a stranger. That is the rarest and most precious thing in this universe. The launch alarm sounded. Jake climbed onto Ash's back and secured himself in the riding harness that Nicole had designed. Around him, 300 other riders were doing the same. Captain Hayes' voice came through the mental link. All riders, form up. Today we show the galaxy what bonded pairs can do. Today we fight not as humans or Krell or Queller or dragons, but as one force with one purpose, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Jake felt Ash's excitement and determination flowing through their bond. The young dragon was ready. They were ready. The dragons launched as one, 300 pairs rising into the sky like a swarm of stars. Behind them, the Galactic Council fleet moved into position, thousands of ships preparing for battle. Ahead of them, the wall of darkness grew closer, blotting out more stars with each passing minute. Jake took a deep breath and felt Ash's steady presence in his mind. They had saved each other in that cave weeks ago. Now they would fight together, and if necessary, die together. But first they would show the Devourers what it meant to face bonded dragon riders. The war for the galaxy was about to begin. The Devourers hit the outer defense line like a hammer smashing through glass. The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Missiles streaked through space, leaving trails of light. Energy beams cut through the darkness. Kinetic rounds that could punch holes through battleship armor slammed into the enemy. Nothing worked. The Devourers simply absorbed the energy from the weapons and kept coming. They were not like normal ships or creatures. Each one looked different, a twisted mix of metal and something that might have been alive once. Some were the size of houses, others were as big as moons. They all moved with a single purpose, flowing forward like a tide of darkness. All riders, engage now, Hayes ordered. 300 dragons dove into the swarm, and everything changed. As Jake felt the moment Ash unleashed his first real attack. Golden fire poured from the dragon's mouth, hotter than the core of a sun. But instead of just burning straight ahead, Jake found he could guide it with his thoughts. The fire curved and twisted, following his will, striking multiple Devourers at once. The creatures burned. They did not just take damage like they had from the fleet weapons. They actually died, breaking apart into ash and nothing. All around Jake, other riders were discovering the same thing. Nicole's Dragon Winter breathed ice that was so cold it shattered Devourers on contact. Haze and Cascade created lightning that jumped from target to target. The Krell Rider and his Dragon Thunder created sonic waves that made the Devourers vibrate themselves to pieces. For a few minutes, and it looked like they might actually win. Then the Devourers adapted. Jake saw it happen. The creatures that survived the first attacks changed. Their surfaces shifted, became reflective or absorptive. They started working together in new patterns, protecting each other, concentrating their fire on individual dragons. A Queller rider to Jake's left took a direct hit. The dragon screamed in pain. a sound that echoed through all the bonded minds. The rider and dragon spiraled down toward the planet, smoke trailing behind them. "We are losing too many!" someone shouted over the mental link. "Hold the line," Hayes commanded. "The transports need more time." Jake checked the mission clock. They had been fighting for 2 hours. They needed 4 more hours to get all the civilians clear. 4 more hours against an enemy that was learning and adapting with every passing minute. The Council fleet was being torn apart. Ships exploded or went dark, their crews dying by the thousands. The Devourers were pushing through, getting closer to New Havens and the evacuation transports. That is when Jake felt it. Something strange was happening with the mental link between all the bonded pairs. Every time a rider and dragon attacked together, their connection created a ripple in space like dropping stones in a pond. The ripples were starting to overlap, creating patterns. "Nicole," Jake called out through the link. "Do you feel that? The resonance pattern?" There was a pause as Nicole focused on what Jake was sensing. "Yes, it is the same type of quantum signature we used to call the dragons." "Jake, well, I think we can weaponize it." "How?" Hayes demanded while Cascade tore through another wave of Devourers. "All the riders need to synchronize," Nicole explained quickly. "Attack at the exact same moment with perfect coordination. If we can get the resonance wave to build up enough, it might disrupt the Devourers' connection to each other. They are all linked somehow, like a hive mind. If we can jam that signal, we could kill them all at once," Jake finished. "Or we could fail and die for nothing," a pessimistic Vex rider added. Tide's ancient voice cut through the debate. "This is what the bond was made for. Not just strength, but unity. Many minds, many species, working as one perfect whole. It can be done, but it will require complete trust and perfect timing." "If we fail?" Hayes asked. Then we die a few hours sooner than planned," Tide said. "But if we succeed, we show the galaxy what is possible when beings stop fighting each other and fight together instead." Jake felt Ash's agreement burning through their connection. Around him, the other riders were coming to the same conclusion. They did not have a choice. The Devourers were going to win unless they tried something desperate. "All riders, pull back and form up on Tide," Hayes ordered. The 300 bonded pairs broke off from their individual battles and flew toward where the massive ancient dragon waited. They arranged themselves in a sphere, a three-dimensional pattern that made Jake's eyes hurt to look at. Tide positioned himself at the center, the anchor point for what they were about to attempt. "Everyone sync with your dragon," Hayes said. "Let the bond flow completely. Do not fight it. Do not control it. Just be together." Jake closed his eyes and opened himself fully to Ash. He felt the young dragon's fierce joy, his absolute trust, his certainty that they would succeed because they had to. Through Ash, Jake began to feel the others. Nicole's calm, analytical mind, Hayes' steady determination, the Krell's tactical precision, 300 minds and 300 dragons becoming something greater. "Now," Hayes commanded. They attacked as one. 300 dragons released their power simultaneously. But this time the energy did not scatter. It wove together, guided by 300 bonded minds acting in perfect synchronization. The combined attack formed a wave of pure quantum disruption that rippled outward from their formation. The wave hit the Devourers and they shuddered. Their movements became jerky and uncoordinated. The hive intelligence connecting them flickered like a bad communication signal. "Again!" Tide roared. They struck again, and this time the effect was stronger. Devourers at the front of the swarm simply fell apart, their molecular bonds severed by the resonance wave. The disruption cascaded backward, each destroyed creature creating more interference. But it was too slow. The swarm was massive, and the riders were getting tired. Jake could feel Ash's energy draining. His own mind felt stretched thin, like a rubber band about to snap. "We need more power," Nicole gasped. "The resonance is working, but we need to amplify it." Dr. Walsh spoke up from his position with his healing dragon. "The communication array back at the colony. If we could link to it, use it to boost the signal?" "The colony is still evacuating," Patricia Cole's voice cut in from the ground. "If you channel that much power through the array, it will overload the reactor. The feedback will destroy the entire settlement." Jake felt the calculations running through the shared consciousness. The last transport ships were lifting off now. Most of the civilians were safe, but there were still people on the ground. Scientist monitoring systems, engineers keeping the reactors stable, Patricia herself coordinating everything from the command center, maybe 200 people, against the millions already evacuated. Patricia's voice came through, steady and calm. Do it. We knew the risks when we volunteered to stay behind. Get everyone else to safety. Make our sacrifice count. Patricia? No, Hayes started to protest. That is an order, Captain. Cole out. The link to the communication array opened. Suddenly, the bonded pairs had access to power beyond anything they had imagined. The quantum resonance wave they created amplified 1,000 times, 10,000 times, becoming a pulse of pure disruption that swept across the entire battlefield. Devourers died by the millions. Their hive intelligence shattered completely. The vast wall of darkness that had seemed unstoppable broke apart, fractured, dissolved into separate pieces that spun off in random directions without coordination. But Jake felt the moment the reactor on New Havens went critical. He felt the colony settlement vaporize in a ball of superheated plasma. 200 people gone in a single instant. Patricia, Cole, and everyone who stayed behind sacrificed so millions could live. The remaining Devourers, now leaderless and confused, were easy targets for the Council fleet. Within an hour, the battle was over. Jake sat on Ash's back in the silence that followed, staring at the empty space where New Havens had been. Nothing remained but cooling gas and debris. They will be remembered, Hayes said quietly over the mental link. Every single one of them. Heroes. 3 days later, the surviving riders gathered on a Vex crystal ship. The Galactic Council wanted answers and wanted to understand what happened. Jake stood before the assembled ambassadors with Ash beside him. The young dragon was tired, his scales dull but alive. They had survived. The bond between rider and dragon has proven more powerful than we imagine, Ambassador Krell said. Not just a weapon, never but a bridge between species, a way to truly work together. The dragons will continue the partnership, Tide added, his voice rumbling through everyone's minds. But we will not be your weapons. We will be your partners. Equal voices in decisions that affect us all. There was resistance from some species. There always was. But the evidence was clear. The bonded pairs had done what the entire Council fleet could not. In the weeks that followed, applications for the Dragon Rider program flooded in from every Council species. Training facilities were established. What started with one human saving one dragon had become a movement reshaping galactic civilization. 6 months later, Jake returned to where New Havens had been. A memorial floated in space now, listing every name of those who died. Patricia Cole's name was first. When Ash had grown huge, his bond with Jake deepening every day. The young dragon pressed against Jake's side, offering wordless comfort. I just wanted to save one life, Jake said quietly. I did not think about destiny or changing the galaxy. I just saw something suffering and tried to help. And changed everything because of it, Nicole said, approaching with Winter beside her. That is what real heroes do, Jake. They do not plan to be heroes. They just do what is right. Jake looked up at the stars, at the memorial, at the dragons and riders who had become his family. He had risked his life to save a dragon hatchling. What came back had terrified the galaxy at first, but terror had turned to hope. Hope that different species could work together. Hope that bonds could be stronger than fear. The journey was just beginning. But with dragons and riders united, maybe they had a chance to build something better. Maybe Patricia's sacrifice meant something after all.